Hi, welcome. We are live. It's Friday night. Oh, it's also Black Friday. How was your Black Friday? My guest is JD. I ain't even gonna try, but another guy from Wisconsin, and I met him a while ago. We had a nice conversation, and he's here to answer your questions and tell him about yourself. Tell the audience
Yeah,
about yourself.
yeah. Name's JD Radewan. I am a transformational coach. I work in, spirit release. This is how I kind of tapped into the paranormal community. A few years ago, I went through, demonic possession in myself, and that actually started a deep spiritual awakening in me. I was actually an atheist at the time. I came out of the school of George Carlin, where I didn't really believe in shit, and kind of farmed out all of my spiritual beliefs to just kind of operating under that. And after my spiritual awakening, I started seeing a lot of really interesting things, to say the least. And it kind of led me down this path. And since then, I've taken a deep interest in the study of shamanism, and really kind of stepped into that role over the last 5 years. And I do podcasting as well. I teach courses in psychic development, as well as mindset mastery, helping people work with their spirit guides, understand how the energetic planes work. And that's why, like I said, that's how I met Joe over at one of the paranormal events here in Broadhead. And it was we had a nice talk outside, like you said there. But yeah, so that's kind of been the short run of it.
So, do you actually go out and investigate stuff too now that you've gotten into the paranormal a bit or
Yeah, I've been on a few investigations. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Phantasm Paranormal, but I have investigated a couple times with them. Yeah, specifically over at the place where the jail where Ed Gein was housed over in Watoma. I did a
that's
couple.
where we met. Yeah, that place.
Yeah. I've done a couple investigations over that way. For me, doing the work I do, I tend to
Nice
protect
place.
myself a little bit more. I have nothing but respect for the paranormal community, because the shit I end up pulling off people after investigations sometimes, I'm like, man, you guys are brave. And I tend to protect my energy a little bit more these days. And so I don't go on a lot of investigations anymore. Once in a while, if I get called, sometimes, spirit will lead you to places you're supposed to go, and it's usually for a reason. But myself, I tend to stay out of it because I know it's real. I don't need to investigate it. I can see it. And like I said, you guys, there's a lot of courage that it takes to do what you guys do.
You
Um,
know, it's just like I got so fascinated with it because I grew up kind of naive around Wisconsin. There was all these different stories. Okay, blah blah blah. But you thought of most of them as like lore or legends or just some story your dad was trying to tell you to scare the hell out of you, right?
mhm.
And when I got to digging, when I got into this and I got to digging, I couldn't believe how strange Wisconsin actually is.
There's a lot of juice here. That is absolutely for sure. Uh, there's a lot of old energy here, a lot of ancient energy that seems to pop up in a lot of different hot spots. A lot of I'll say portals that I've seen, and they seem to pop up in unique places, almost tied together on the grid. I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
that, but one of the reasons I got the flower of life on my hand is
Oh,
that
that's kind of cool.
life is the grid. So, there's definitely been some interesting things here and in the South, right? I will say, like I just got back. I've been driving around for the last 12 months, just kind of exploring, and the only other place where I've seen the amount of activity is like New Orleans, that I see on a regular basis here. I mean, there's so many investigation places. I mean, I think, at that paranormal show I was at, there must have been 15 teams there from around the state. I mean, to
Yeah.
me, that's a pretty high number,
Yeah.
for what it is.
Yeah, but I've actually been to a couple that were quite bigger than that. where you had all kinds of teams with their tables and their wares, like their books or whatever, and then just the teams roaming around, and it's like, oh my god, because I've gone down to like Chicago Paracon,
Hmm.
and oh, what was the other one? Rock Island, which is down in Illinois. You know, the Milwaukee one this year wasn't. It could have been a little. I don't know what happened there. It was more of a joke this year or something, and I don't mean that. It's more like there wasn't as many people as there was last year.
Right.
So I don't think, and I think that's because they were losing their venue. Because the buildings get, and that's another thing. Let me ask you this: how do you feel when and I'm saying this as they, as in the people that just are in it for the money, or are just in it for themselves? Okay, how do you feel about some of these historical landmarks getting destroyed?
I don't feel very good about it at all. I feel like, the reason that I have such a high respect for this, and that I got really lucky is, when I was in, the few times I've been on investigation with Phantasm, you know, I only had paranormal, the way to gauge it before was what I had seen on TV, where I didn't see a lot of respect for spirits, where people are yelling at things, like destroying sacred sites, sacred
Yeah,
ground just to get a
yeah. A lot
reaction.
of it's just for ratings.
Right. And, for me, I believe that the spirit realm is meant to be treated with respect, and you get in return what you treat it with. And, I come from the school of fuck around and find out, so
Right.
I tend to, show more respect for those things. But, I think, we live in a world right now where, we've been programmed to kind of operate from that ego, right? Like where, people want to be like what they see on TV, but it's not reality, right? Like what's going on here in the real world outside of the, like the programming
Yeah.
of what we've been taught is, a lot different, right? So,
Well,
I think, destroying sacred sites is, yeah, I mean, it just shows the level of respect that people have for what they're doing.
yeah. Some of this stuff just sometimes it's hard to do what we do because when you go on an investigation, like let's say to a cemetery, and I'll give you a good example of one. There's a cemetery in Chicago called Bachelor's Grove.
Hmm.
Okay, very tiny, out of the way, not too, but it's got some good ghost stories there where spirits have been seen and so on and so forth, right? But at the same time, you get these, uh, I guess I'd put it kids, because people my age, I don't think would desecrate a grave, or a headstone, or whatever. But there was a lot of graffiti and stuff there, and a lot of weird stuff going on. For example, they were like doing some kind of fire type ritual on top of a tombstone they tipped over,
Hmm.
because you could see the scorch marks, you know. But, you know, what do we do? You can
Well,
only do so much. Those people end up going to these places late at night, do their thing, and yeah,
I think guys like me and you know that there's a price to pay eventually for things like that, right? Karma is a very real thing, and if there's one thing I know about the universe is that it comes with a certain lesson plan as we evolve. So you know, um, a lot of that's born out of immaturity. I mean, I did a lot of stupid shit when I was a kid. I mean, like I'll take full ownership of that, but
yeah. I'm glad there was no recording devices of any kind when I was growing up.
yeah, I grew up in the old school, man. We were, but we didn't go out and desecrate graves and things like that. Like
No,
there's always been a level of respect for the dead. With
no, I kind of went to construction sites and played around with whatever they left behind,
yeah, yeah,
you know. But when it comes to graves or cemeteries, I was always taught to respect them. Um, my grandma, for many years on my dad's side, well, practically his entire family of elders kind of lived in the four houses on this little block, as part of the Greenbush neighborhood in Madison. But they lived right across from Forest Hill Cemetery on Speedway Road. Well, when I was a kid, me and my cousins were there. The worst thing we did in the cemetery was sit there and play like ghosts in the graveyard.
right.
So we're trampling along, trampling over somebody's grave at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock. But that same cemetery now, many years later, I'm already in high school or whatever. I think it was when I was in high school. They went in there and burned flags after, what would it be, Memorial Day?
Hmm.
Yeah, they took all the flags off because that's a well known. I mean, you got veterans from every war right down to the Civil War in that cemetery. So there's a lot of flags in there. They took and they were burning flags in that cemetery, and it's like, you know, people need to learn how to grow up when it comes to that. But at the same time, I blame society because when I was a kid and I grew up in Madison, there was plenty for us to do. Now, what do they got to do? Not much.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think yeah, it's definitely a different time. For me, I spend a lot of time in the graveyard. As someone who does a lot of psychic work and mediumship. Interestingly enough, this is kind of going to sound ass backwards, but graveyards are like the quietest place for me because it's a place of peace and it's a place of rest and it's where souls go to, transition, right? So me, I personally, I'll make offerings when I go to a graveyard. I will, bring food and, drink but I will just, it's a place of peace for me. And it is for a lot of people, it's a place of grieving. It's a place of love. And, I think, I gotta say it because it's coming to my mind. I think, like one of the issues that we got with a lot of disrespect and it coming from certain aspects of the magical community is that we have a lot of these TikTok witches and warlocks coming up and thinking that, because they saw something on a video that they got to try it. But, like people really don't have any idea what they're messing with. And you should
Yeah,
really have pretty good knowledge of the esoteric before you start, I mean, once again, fucking around and finding out, like there's just things you should be very, very wary of. Things go bump in the night, and you don't want to piss things
well,
off.
see, like you said that earlier, you said that one word. There's one word I believe in: karma.
Yeah,
You know, and I try to always have that good karma because I'm waiting to live long enough to see the bad karma hit some people in the ass that truly deserve it. That's why I don't take out revenge on anybody either. You know, let karma do the work for me.
that was the message the creator gave me this year. I for what it's worth, I did a lot of shit when I was younger, and I paid with some heavy life lessons, and I learned from that, who I wanted to be in the world, and I
Yeah.
honor that as one of my life's greatest teachers. The message I got from my source, or like what I speak to in the universe, is compassion is knowing you can destroy somebody, but choosing to sheath the sword,
All
right?
right.
And letting and wisdom is letting the universe handle it, karma, and just kind of staying out of the way.
Well, yeah, and it just creates a lot less stress this way.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I've got a whole lot of things I want to do, and I don't know how much time I got left. You know, for all we know, I might live forever. I keep telling people I'm a vampire, but it's because I had blood cancer and I used to keep third shift hours. My job was third shift a lot because in Madison, I worked for one of the oldest law enforcement companies in the entire world, Pinkerton.
Oh shit, no, yeah, yeah, that's pretty wild, man. I
Here,
know
I'll
about.
show you. I'll show you. It'll give my real name away, but I don't care. That's one of the things I got left from my days there.
Oh, that's very cool, man. That's so cool. I'm an old Western kind of buff, and like the Pinkertons were always big part of that. They were some badasses.
Yeah,
You came up against the Pinkertons, you were in deep shit.
yeah. They did the stagecoach bank runs.
Hmm.
You know, but everybody knows who they were. So, and you know, I also did was part of when I worked for them. One of the biggest things that happened to me was the Central Storage Warehouse fire that was on Cottage Grove Road in Madison, and it melted all that government butter and cheese and stuff, and created a river along Cottage Grove Road. You know,
Wow.
stunk for years after that. It really did. But I worked that as a security officer. I was there working that.
Yeah.
Forklift caught on fire, and they were until the investigation was over. Security needed to be there on duty.
Yeah. So, speaking of investigations, do you still go on investigations too? Or,
Well, I didn't do so many this year because I had like a falling out with my partner.
yeah.
But I plan on going when it gets warmer again because of the cancer I went through. I hibernate in the winter. So when it gets warmer again, me and the vehicle and the wife will be going out. You know, we got our truck even more decked out than the last time you saw it.
Yeah, that was pretty nice, man.
Yeah, I've got a light bar for it now. We've got a musical horn that's going to go in there.
Very
So,
cool. So, what are some of the things you've experienced on, on investigation? I got a couple stories I can tell you, and they come mostly based in ego and immaturity, and things I won't do again.
well, the weirdest one that I because I can't explain the whole thing. It's not easy. But we went to Farrar School in Iowa. I think yeah, Maxwell, Iowa. It was after the Buddy Holly crash site place.
Hmm.
So it was in Maxwell, Iowa, and I was there with Dale Kazmarek. He's been doing this since the 70s, formed the Ghost Research Society and stuff. But he's like an elder to me. So
Hmm.
I respect him that way. So I kind of look to him like a mentor. But he had all this cool equipment. You know, we joined him. But I walk into the school and I had this feeling and started feeling sick so bad that I had to walk back out of the school for a while. Get my thoughts together. I I used to carry. I should still carry it. I probably when we go on investigations, but I had a cross,
Yeah,
right? But I just left it in the car. It was hanging over the mirror and stuff. So I went to the car, smoked a cigarette. Put that necklace on, and then I, kind of like, okay, take a deep breath, and I walked back into the place. So before we got setting up, I get in there and everything was fine. I wasn't feeling sick no more. And we saw he was setting up his cameras and stuff, and we saw a ball go across the gym floor. We had oh, what was that? Uh, Phantasm Box, or it's like a program that was on his laptop.
Okay.
Okay, and he had external speakers. We went into the boiler room and we were doing EM, you know, voice session, asking questions. And man, we got a lot of voices, and one in particular was you could tell was extremely angry, you know. And I'm like, yeah, that was like the most activity in one place that I've seen.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's awesome. I mean, it's also freaky, man. I tell you, so some of the work I do is I clear homes. That's one of the things I do, and it actually came. I learned I could do it by messing some shit up. So I was actually teaching some classes to Phantasm at one time, and the gentleman had actually one of the gentlemen in there. I'm not going to name him by name, but I love you, brother, if you're listening. Had touched Ed Gein's knife, and an entity had jumped onto him, and it was really nasty. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was kind of new in my training, and I pulled it off him, and then it followed me home, and I didn't know how to get rid of it because it was a little bit gnarlier than anything I had dealt with before. And it just kind of stayed outside of the warding on my property for a while until I figured out how to do it. But so that was, I hadn't even been on investigation yet, and that was what I had experienced. And then after I went on investigation, I touched that. Like I was in, it was my first one, and I was actually, you know, they had a human skull in there, and I held onto that for a bit, and then also touched that same knife. But I had went into the cell where Ed Gein was held, and like everybody was investigating a different part of the jail, and I just went in there because I don't, for me, I don't use the gadgets or anything. I just want to be in the energy, right? Like I want to see if I can communicate without using the other things because
Yeah,
it's
it's like your best tool is yourself.
I try to teach that. Paranormal investigators, man, they're so tapped in. That's why I love to work with them and their psychic gifts because, you know, um, you guys already have the limiting belief structures about what's real and what isn't already gone, right? So it's just like a little nudge a little bit farther, and you can really start opening up to talk to them. But you got to do it safely. Like that heavier energy, that angry energy you feel. Like you got to be careful, man. I'm a firm believer in protections. Like I wear mine when I go in places. And I've been told this is one thing I wanted to talk about. A lot of people say that they won't wear protections, or they're told not to wear protections on investigation. And I'll tell you, if I'm ever on an investigation, I'm wearing fucking protection. I think like the recurring theme is that like if you're wearing protection, you're not going to have any activity. And I can tell you that that has not been the truth in my case at all. Some nights are going to be better than others, but I think it's like that whether you got protection or not. So that's another thing I teach people is how to protect themselves. Like a lot of gnarly stuff. And you don't want to bring that kind of thing home to your family, your
Well,
kids.
I think a lot of people have the mindset that, you know, nothing can attach to me. That's a bunch of malarkey. You're full of shit, blah, blah, blah. That kind of attitude, right? Or they think that ain't going to happen to me. You know, I don't, I've always had an open mind ever since my cancer battle. Okay. I keep saying anything's possible. All right. But I never experienced an attachment until like last year.
Hmm.
My wife and I went to Michigan. Okay, the long way around. We went down to Chicago, Indiana, and back up, right? And we went to Eloise. Okay. And we got a brick from Eloise from one of the buildings they just recently tore down.
Hmm.
Okay, so we got a brick from the building, right? And it's like, oh, this is cool. Didn't think nothing of it, you know. And everything in my truck was working perfect on the
Right.
way there, right? We had no air conditioning on the way back. And then I didn't think about it until my wife brought it up about 2 days later because, you know, we came back on a Sunday, so she had to work Monday and Tuesday. And she was driving home from work and driving to work. A couple of times this happened to her. She looked in the mirror and saw a shadow figure in the rear view mirror, so sitting in the back seat. She's like, that fucking brick is still in there, isn't it? And I said, yep. She says, you better get that thing out. And I'm like, okay. Well, we were already suspecting the brick because the air conditioning went out and it was working perfect.
Right.
You know, because it got so cold sometimes on the way there, even though it was 90 plus degrees, you know, very little wind and so on and so forth. We'd have to turn it down because it got a little cold in the truck. Well, it didn't work at all on the way back. But I took it out and now it sits out in the driveway.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because the second investigation I went on, I went back to the same place and I drove there and my truck was fine. And then I left. It was a 2 night investigation. I left, and all of a sudden the rear end was clicking, but there was nothing wrong with it, right? So I had picked up an attachment myself, um, and they do that. They'll mess with mechanical things. They'll mess with electronics, because they're energy, right? So they get in, and what they try to do is this is how I explain the possession versus attachment, right? An attachment is like it's on the outside of you, and it is like fucking with shit in your external reality, right?
Right.
And a possession is like somebody's at the keyboard of your mind, and it's fucking everything up, you know.
Yeah, and see, and then you got the ones that are like just, you know, they're like not going to attach themselves to you, but they should only show themselves or do things to kind of get you off the property or away from the
Right.
property you're at. You know, I mean, I've lived in Wisconsin all my life. I've seen and I've seen some pretty strange things as far as weather phenomenons go and so on and so forth. You hear of the Beast of Bray Road? You ever hear that story?
I have not heard that one.
The Beast of Bray Road is a dog man like character, you know, and wolf man, or, you know. It was named by Linda Godfrey back in 19 something, 70 something, I think it was, or 60 something. She wrote a book called The Beast of Bray Road. God rest her soul, though. Anyway, for the last 4 years until the guy got a little too greedy, I was investigating a specific piece of land there. And me and a couple other people were doing an overnight, and we were trying to stay because we got all these trail cam pictures and stuff, but everything that we wanted to see and check out happened right around sunrise, you know, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, according to the stamps on the trail cam pictures. So about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. We're tracking this bipedal upright in a cornfield on a thermal camera. And myself and the other guy are talking, and, you know, then we lost track of it, and we're like, well, maybe it followed the other dude down into the field more. And as we're talking more and stuff, and it's approaching about 3 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden, the fog rolls in, faster than hell and thick as hell. And I've lived here all my life and I never seen anything like it. We hurried up, packed up all of our equipment because cameras and stuff like that. That dampness is damaging to equipment. We're out there with flashlights like 5 minutes after packing up, looking around, making sure we picked up everything, and the fog is lifted and gone and everything. It's just like it came long enough to chase us off the land and pack up. So we couldn't be there at sunrise. Just 2 hours.
Yeah.
2 hours. That's how close we were. And this property over the years has gotten called the Skinwalker Ranch of Wisconsin because you don't just see. I mean, when I went to this place, I was just expecting to hear these dogman and wolf like stories, and a lot of them, some of those, if you know the area and the wildlife enough, you can dismiss some of them, but not all of them. All right. So I'm there. I go there, and I couldn't believe what we got into. So we went back every year for till the guy got too greedy.
Yeah, those are, this is why I say you guys are courageous, man, because, I got to tell you, I see enough weird shit pulling this kind of shit off of people that I don't, I don't want to go investigate it very often. That's, but that hour between like 3 and 6, like I'm up at that time, like almost every day because it is like, that is when the veil is the thinnest, right? Like the veil is thinning, like that window of 3 to 6 a.m. Or right before dawn. There's usually a lot of weird things happen right as the light's coming in, right? So that makes sense.
Well, it does make sense. You got to keep an open mind. You know. The other thing, when you do what you do, the cemeteries are the best because people that are there sometimes are just going to stay there because they got nobody left. You know, so they're going to maybe wander around in that such cemetery where they're buried and maybe talk to the relatives that are buried closer to them. In the same cemetery, but they ain't going to wander because there's nobody left to watch because their family's kind of gone, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, the older the cemetery, the more likely you're going to have stuff like that happening.
I'll tell you, when I was down in New Orleans, I went to the grave where I don't know if you're familiar with Maria Laveau. She
Yeah,
was
I've heard.
the Yeah, I went down and visited the Voodoo Queen's grave, and that was, they got that was pretty powerful night tour, which was really cool because the tour guide was actually from Michigan. Super cool guy. Like if you go down there, you really gotta do that tour. If anybody's going down to New Orleans, you got to go over there, do the Maria Laveau tour because he takes you through the whole gravesite, and he really just gives you a history, the real history, not the stuff that's in books. That's what the beauty of that is, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff in books, but like to really get the lore of an area, you really have to talk with the locals. I'm sure you know that. You're an investigator.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that's written for fluff, and then there's the things that really happen and really is going on.
Well, that's exactly, that's why I say, Hollywood and stuff should just leave their hands to themselves in some cases. The Yeah, that's got fucked up. Sorry about the link. Anyway, come on. I gotta get back to getting used to this program. I put in the wrong link. Um, but yeah, take let's take what do you think of the Amityville house? Remember that legend? You
That's
know?
a Yeah, I'm familiar with the Amityville house. What do I think? This actually ties into Remember earlier when I told you I did a bunch of shit that I shouldn't have done, and it came out of ego. So my friend had a bottle of water from the Amityville house, and we both decided to drink some, and that's when shit got real fucking weird for a bit. So what do I think? What do I think of the Amityville house? I think it's an energetic hotspot that I believe held a portal. I believe that there was a portal there that let certain spirits through that attached to the people that were there, right? Like that's how I see it. And
Well,
that's what I think it goes when I was talking about the difference between attachment and possession. That goes into that full possession.
well,
And
that whole story kind of gets to me because I think the Lutzes are full of shit. You know,
yeah,
they kind of enhanced what really happened. You know, exaggerated. There we go.
yeah, most people
For the
will.
books or the movie rights, but the real story, the if you look deep, that real story about Ronnie DeFeo killing his parents and his siblings while they were sleeping in that house. That's the true story, and that would scare the hell out of me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because that's some bad juju right there.
One of the things that I see, after something like that happens and why there's so much activity in those places, it's like like we're all living in the eternal moment of now. Not to get super weird about this, but I'm going to try to condense it down. So when something that with that much power, that much anger, that much, just
Tragic.
yeah, well, it
Tragic.
rips a hole, it rips a portal, right? Like, and it creates an imprint in that time. Sometimes on investigation, people aren't seeing ghosts. Like when you say you see something at the same time every day, it's not necessarily a ghost. It's just an imprint of something that's replaying on repeat, right?
Yeah.
And that so some of those things can be that. But when something that bad happens, it can create a portal and then other things can come through, and that's kind of what the mo is sometimes too, for some of these darker energies.
I just know when I people talk about that house sometimes it just gets to me because a lot of them are in it for the money.
Right.
So they exaggerate the stories. You get down to the professionals that were there, and that's kind of hard to believe, but you know, you can't always trust the clergy either because, well, look, some of them will do things for immoral reasons and think that they're still a saint and going to get away and go to heaven or whatever. But everybody, when it comes to money, sometimes they're greedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all it takes is a little money, and that priest, oh yeah, this house is cursed, or you know. I mean, I don't buy that one, but I do buy some of the stuff I've seen because I have seen some pretty strange stuff over the years. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me, I work on clearing houses. Like for me, one of the passions I have is teaching paranormal investigators, and I'm working with a few right now on how to actually help those spirits cross over because a lot of them got stuck, right? Like like a lot of spirits got stuck here. Like
well, they
what
don't even know they're dead.
that is the first question you ask them. Do you know you're dead? And they're like, oh, that explains so much. Like,
Right.
but some of them do, and like, and a lot of them, in my experience, a lot of them died feeling like they weren't good enough to go to heavens and that they were going to go to hell, so they just chose to stay here. And until you can, like I mean, like it's a process to get them to cross
Yeah.
over. It's conversations on both sides and family and ancestors and a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts to get them to help to cross over. But like that's a big part of it, and I think that we see a lot of amplified energy in certain houses because a lot of these spirits are ready to cross over. Like in my experience, people will have things happen in their homes because the spirits like, huh, like I'm done here. I want to go. Like that's when you start seeing the poltergeist types that are throwing stuff, getting angry. And that's when they're starting to get dangerous because they've been out of body for a long time and they're sucking energy from anything they can. So they'll do that through fear. And by throwing things, they're getting people amped up and they're juicing themselves up so they can continue to stay here. But a lot of them just want to move on with their soul's journey, right? And I feel like the last few years, at least in my life, there's just been a lot more of that happening. I mean, it could be, like not to project what's going on in my life onto anybody else, but I believe we're coming to like a shift. And that's why we're seeing so many, people getting involved in paranormal investigation. We're seeing, so many good people like, actually interested in this because they're beginning to see that maybe everything we've been taught hasn't been necessarily fucking true. So
Right.
we're trying to figure out and investigate it together and try to figure out how we can, you know, like what is this, right? Because
Yeah,
it goes
well,
against every
some of them are just in it for the fame and the fortune,
yeah,
and I'm in it for answers because I'm curious. I've seen a lot too. I've experienced a lot, so I want answers. Like some of those spirits may have unfinished business yet. Maybe they need to tell a loved one that they love them or kind of get a message across. That's where you come in, trying to help them pass over, right? It's not always a bad thing. But, you know, some people just don't want to keep an open mind to this and just decide to exaggerate it or make a few things up and go out and say, oh, it's all for the money. Well, that makes us look bad because over the years, when my friends started back in the 70s, doing the ghost research thing was not really a very acceptable thing like it is
right.
today, you know, and he tells, and it's like, people are just starting to believe this, and then at the same time, the world's getting so divided, and it's getting hard for us to, get out all those wannabes and ones that want to sit there and in it for just the money, and the ones that want true answers and to truly help people, because I did meet a couple and we had no idea about exercising the ghosts or getting them out of the we had no idea how to do that. But they literally they were a young couple, you know, and they just got married and all this, bought a house, and they basically said, bye, we're leaving. They had, I think it was Racine Paranormal came in there, and, a couple of teams, plus myself, because I was close friends with the couple. And they got so scared and couldn't get any answers or couldn't get it cleared. They got it cleared once, and it lasted maybe a few weeks. Nothing happened, and they were just getting like he'd go and they come down in the kitchen, the drawers in the oven would be open, or he'd go to the bathroom and the lights would be on or the water would be running, things like that in this house. And finally, they just said, gave up, sold the house, bought a new place, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been
they just couldn't handle it,
well,
and
it'll freak you out, Like I've been in some haunted places. I mean, I lived in them. I They were attracted to me before I was awakening, right? Like I didn't know what was happening, but certain people will actually carry them with them because they're awake, right? Like I hate
yeah,
using that term, like the woke, and then none of that shit. By awake, I mean you're awakened to a reality beyond your natural
right,
perception, right? That's what I mean by awaken. So when things like that can actually be more of a nuisance for people like that because they already know that there's something more, right? And then the energy that those type of entities use, they how they draw energy is through fear, anxiety, worry, dread. So they'll do all those things to just get the response, to get the energy they need to keep doing the shit they're doing.
Right.
And until you have somebody who knows how to deal with them, to go and have a talk with them. For me, I'll be very honest. I go in and I have a talk with them first. Like I come at it with love, I come at it with appreciation, but I also am like, this is their home now, and like if it doesn't go that way, like you're gonna go one way or another. Like whether it's not here, I'm not gonna send you anywhere, but it's time for you to go because this is a place of peace and this is what this family wants to experience, right? So it's
Mhm.
about claiming your power, claiming your space, but you know it's not just as simple. It's not simple all the time. Like a lot of them are. A lot of them are because most of them are ready to go. Some of them don't, and they have, like you said, unfinished business. And
Well, or like back to the couple because they had like psychics and all that. They were trying everything. Okay, but when it came out, they found out that it was a little boy that had a tragic death, and his name was Tommy.
mhm.
The male of that young couple, his name was Tom.
Wow,
And he was seeing this more than his girlfriend or his wife at the time. When they got married while they were living, in the house. I always.
mhm.
But she wouldn't believe him half the time because he was a comedian, like to play practical jokes and stuff like that on her until she saw it for herself.
Yeah,
And then it's like Amstray. It's like, we're out of here. You
yeah.
know,
It's
But see,
yeah,
that little boy, like I said, it's a little boy spirit. Maybe he just didn't know he was dead, and somehow somebody just had to convince him of it, and they didn't want to, that nobody really approached it that way.
right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, like it's there's a lot to it. I don't like talking about how to do it because then people try it and they don't know what they're doing and they get themselves in a lot of trouble because not everything that appears as what you think it is what it is. If that makes sense,
Yeah, it does to me. Well, like I said, I had a after death experience,
Yeah,
okay, and it was very real to me, and it changed a lot of things. That's why I do what I do.
yeah,
Plus, I'm having a lot of fun. I meet a lot of great people. I met you. I met, a lot of great people in the field. Yeah, there's some few bad apples, but it doesn't matter what you do. There's always going to be a few bad apples in whatever group you're going to look for. But
yeah, yeah,
if you overlook those few bad apples, I've met nothing but very terrific people. You know, and
yeah, yeah.
I've been doing this since 2019.
I gotta say, when I was at like I was the only paranormal expo I'd been to, and even though like a lot of people didn't show up, the camaraderie I felt, like, yeah, I know there's competition. And competition's healthy, right? You want to talk a little shit. That's kind of what we do, right? We're
Well,
humans,
yeah,
but it's from a place of love, you know what I mean? And like you said, curiosity, shared interest, shared curiosity, and
shared
appreciation.
experiences, and uh, yeah, it's been that way. It just at every paranormal conference that I've gone to.
Yeah,
I've only really met one person that I can't stand. That's in it for the money, and and that's because, how can I say this? The person kind of like plagiarized somebody else when they did a stand up thing.
hmm
When they did their presentation at the conference, they plagiarized one of the authors of the books. Uh, actually, well, I ain't gonna say that because that'll give it away. But anyway, I just there's one person in Wisconsin out of all the people I've met in Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, and everything. There's only that one person in Wisconsin that I can't stand. I have gotten nothing but tons of respect and love and from everybody else that I've met. They it's like a special, yeah, it's like a little bit of competition, but it never goes too far. You know, it's more like I want to share my story, and then somebody's going to say, "Yeah, I had this experience." Trying to compete that way. But when you listen to it, you're getting two great stories from the same location.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had nothing but awesome experiences at all of those that I've gone to over the years.
And that's why I enjoyed, like I really felt like the creator put me in the car with Phantasm. I can't say enough good things about them. Like I had the privilege of going with them while they were also hosting tours for other people. And the family atmosphere they brought to it, right? Like they got pizza, they got games, they got prizes, and like they're just, and at the same time teaching each person that came out of interest, right? Like that came from watching things on TV and wanted
Right.
to experience that, but they getting to experience it firsthand, their knowledge of teaching how each one of the instruments work, and their deep knowledge on a electronic level of how that works, then allowing the people to play with them, or not play, but and investigate with them.
Or yeah, try
And
them out and see what they think.
I mean, and it gives people an experience, right? Something that they wanted to experience in life that they didn't know how they were going to. And then, people like this help make dreams come true. And what a, interesting dream it is. But, like that's, no, here nor there for me, life just got weird for me, and this is what I got dealt. And we deal, we deal with what we get dealt.
Well, as time's going on, you know, it's like a lot of this stuff isn't even being kept a secret so much anymore. You know, I mean, yeah, they still got Area 51 and 52, whatever. But, there's more alien reports, and
Oh, yeah.
and you're actually seeing people talk about it on the news.
Yeah. Well, they're
You
trying to
know,
let us. They're trying to let us know that what a lot of us have known for a long time, little by little, because it's going to shatter people's egoic beliefs of what they thought life was, and do that collectively all at once would fuck a lot of people up.
well, we got to be pretty ignorant, stupid, naive, whatever, to think that in this universe, just this universe, and
Right,
which that's just a small little speck of what's out there, that we're the only life on one planet out of a million or more.
right.
I mean, that's pretty ignorant to think that way.
Not to mention all the interdimensional stuff that they're picking up in the quantum these days.
Right.
Like I mean, like you see ghosts, where are they? Right, like that's another dimension, right? Like they've been waking us up little by little, but they hide it. They hide it under the guise of fiction or
Yeah.
fantasy, right? Like if you really want to learn what's going on, watch kids movies because they're letting you know everything right in there.
Yeah.
They're telling you the secret sauce, and it's funny because that's also how part of the programming, right? Is the make it a fantasy so nobody will ever believe it, but hide it right in front of them. Just like UFO disclosure stuff, they give you 10 pieces of disinformation with one truth because it's universal law. You got to let it out, right? But
Well,
you put a bunch of bullshit in there with it, and then people
and
constantly wondering.
nowadays, everybody has got one of these in their pockets.
Yeah,
Which basically is a computer in your pocket that you can take pictures and video with.
right.
And with that, well, let's see. How did it used to be? Oh, wow, check it out. I wish I had a camera. I'd take a picture of it. Well, shit, nowadays you got a camera. Let's take a picture. Oh, better yet, let's take a video, you know.
Right.
And more stuff is getting seen because of that.
Yeah.
Sure there are some fakes and stuff, and this AI stuff is starting to ruin things because people are putting out some of those pictures and stuff that look real but aren't real.
Yeah. There's a
So
lot of that going on.
you gotta be a lot more careful when examining pictures and video and stuff like that. But you got like the ring door camera, I mean, but when that stuff comes in handy. Technology has really helped over the years because you can't always go out and catch something in the wildlife that you might want to catch on camera,
Right.
and it
I,
has brought forth a lot of good stuff to check out. And then at the same time, it takes more work because you got to see how much of that can be manipulated.
oh yeah.
You know,
You're right on the money about things that don't
and
want to
we
be
go back
captured.
to 72, or no, is it 67? Maybe it was, the Patterson footage, Bigfoot footage, you know. And during that time, that would have been impossible to fake,
Right.
you know. But today, that'd be pretty easy to do.
It's funny you said that because I was just going to bring up, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Like I was down in, I was in the hills of Chattanooga and also coming up the Smoky Mountains in Georgia. And, I ended up at this place and as a psychic, sometimes these things reach out and sometimes you can see them, but they don't want to be seen. They don't trust humans, right? And why the fuck would they?
Right.
Like you have to be a vibrational match, and that match is love, right? Like you have to really, they have to feel that you mean no harm to even present themselves. But even then, I felt one's presence, and I was so drained. Like a 1 to 2 minute interaction, and my energy levels were like nothing for like a day and a half. Like all I could do was
Wow.
sleep, and that's there's some deeper esoteric reasons as to why that I'm not really at liberty to talk about, based on some of my teachings. But I understand the energetics of it. Like they work with a lot of the stuff we do, and they're also, you know, they were the first ones here. They were they were some of the first ones here, and they're still around, guarding. They're guardians of Earth, right? Like that's how I see them.
Look at, well, we're running out of time, but Wisconsin is very rich in Native American history, you know. And if you look into some of this local legends and lores, and the Bigfoot, the Beast of Bray Road, and that, a lot of it is tied into some of the Native American stuff and their beliefs. And if you actually do the research to some of this, it's amazing. They What they believe in, and it explains so much,
Yeah.
you know.
I yeah, I guess I haven't done a lot with the local lore. But I can tell you just from an energetic level, I got drawn to the Muncie Indian Reservation, and the heaviness I felt on there. I'd actually had dreams about that place like 4 years prior before coming over there, and I experienced some very interesting things on the back roads up there. I drove them for a couple hours, just getting a
I
feel for it.
I'd be interested to see what you had to say about the Princess Indian, the Indian Princess Mound,
Okay, where's that located?
Lake Mills.
Interesting. Yeah,
It,
I haven't been.
it's at Asylum State Park.
Okay.
Uh, that place is filled with a lot of energy, and I'd tell you stories, but you should experience the place first before you hear the stories,
Okay.
and
Very
then we'd
cool.
see what kind of things match.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to go back out there. That's one of the places I want to go back out and do some more filming and because I want to go back out and do things. I've had, let's just say, the first couple of times we were out there, we had all our equipment drained of their batteries.
Yeah.
And the little cards that you put in, nowadays you got the little, those little cards, whatever, they're about so big,
Yeah.
for like your digital, video cameras and stuff. Brand new one. Put it in the camera, did a lot of recording, got home, put the thing in the computer. It was totally corrupted. No video. But I'll have to tell you, we're going to have to call this quits.
Yeah.
So, any place you got to share a link or where anybody can find you next, or
Yeah. If you just look me up, you can find me at awarewolfenterprises.com. It's AWAREWOLF Enterprises, ENTERPRISES.com. I book one-on-one sessions. I work with energy clearing. I teach courses in psychic development. Best place to get a hold of me though is just right here. You see my name on the screen. It is just JD Radewan on Facebook. I'm very easy to get a hold of. You can just follow me there. I think I've hit my limit of how many people can request me at this point. But just feel free to reach out. Hit the follow button and just shoot me a message on Messenger if you're looking to connect. And if you got any weird shit going on with your house, any weird things going on with you, you're a fellow investigator that's looking to deepen their psychic skills because you guys are all right on that cusp. I'd love to learn more from you. I'd love to work with you and see what happens. You know, uh, but I just want to thank you, Joe, man. Thank you for having me on, man.
well,
Thank you
thanks
for
for coming
thank you
on.
for smoking a cigarette with me outside.
Yeah, anytime. So I'm gonna end this. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great holiday and a safe weekend. And remember, anything's possible.